trans kids in the crowd, know that we love you, we got you, we will protect you, and we will not stop fighting for you.
I am outside the Supreme Court where the justices, as we speak, are debating one of the most important cases to impact the lives of transgender Americans. People have been braving the cold temperatures to be here to have their voices heard. Over here are people who are largely against gender-affirming care for minors.
I'm very concerned about the medical harms being inflicted on these kids and also the mental confusion imposed on them because they're told just because they're not comfortable with their sex bodies or because they don't conform to gender stereotypes that their bodies should be changed. That is wrong.
The crowd behind me over here came out to support gender-affirming care for kids. They are braving the freezing temperatures to have their voices heard.
I did not get to transition until I was 48 years old. I lost half my life not being true to myself. We are happier to be ourselves than anyone else you will find on this planet. And taking that away from children is criminal.
Now, we won't know the outcome of this court case until the summer. A lot of folks here eagerly awaiting how that decision will play out.
Well, I'm sorry to inform you, but we know a lot more than that. After oral arguments were presented yesterday, it does look as if the left's last-ditch efforts at overturning the Tennessee law that bans medical gender transitions for minors has come crashing down, and with it, the implosion of wokeness itself. Hey, gang, it's me, Dr. Steve, your Patriot Professor, here to celebrate the dawning of the new golden age that you made happen on November the 5th. So make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. Also, we often talk about how we can maintain and build up the conservative way of life, and one crucial aspect of that is your routine. I mean, staying strong physically, mentally. It's not just about living longer, it's about living better. Now, I partnered with Beam because they're a health and wellness company that's put in the time and rigorous research to craft science-backed solutions that truly optimize every system in your body from the moment you wake up until you lay your head down to sleep. Now, more specifically, I've been using Beam Dream for a while, and it has completely changed the way I sleep. I love this. So, you see, I don't sleep well. I used to toss and turn while my mind raced all night. But since taking Dream, I don't even know what to say. I fall asleep so much faster. I even sleep through the night. It's a game changer. Beam Dream is made with the highest quality sleep-promoting ingredients to help you unwind and get the deep sleep you need and you deserve. It's become a nightly ritual of mine that I look forward to each and every day. Plus, I never wake up feeling groggy the next morning. I even wake up before my alarm sometimes, which is something I never used to do. But I got to tell you, I've got the best deal I've ever had with Beam. So now's your time to give Dream a try. Shop Beam's Cyber Monday sale all week long and get up to 50% off site-wide for a limited time. You heard that right, half off. Don't miss out on this offer. Click the QR code on the screen or use the link below to propel your wellness journey into the next stage today. It's being widely reported that the Supreme Court is indeed about to uphold the ban on medical transitions for minors. The conservatives on the court all signaled that they found the woke left's arguments hopelessly unconvincing, but that didn't stop the more left-wing judges from having their moment in the sun. Here's Justice Ketanji Brown pushing the logic of discrimination to new heights, we might say, in her cross-examination.
That was sort of like the starting point. The question was whether it was discriminatory because it applied to both races and it wasn't, necessarily invidious or whatever. But, as I read the statute here, the case here, the court starts off by saying that Virginia is now one of 16 states which prohibit and punish marriages on the basis of racial classifications. And when you look at the structure of that law, it looks in terms of, you can't do something that is inconsistent with your own characteristics. It's sort of the same thing. So it's interesting to me that we now have this different argument, and I wonder whether Virginia could have gotten away with what they did here by just making a classification argument the way that Tennessee is in this case.
Yes, I think that's exactly right, that there is absolutely a parallel between any law that says you can't act inconsistent with a protected characteristic and in all other contexts.
But perhaps the single most bizarre moment of the hearings came from none other than Justice Sotomayor. While engaging with the Tennessee Solicitor General, She actually had the goal to compare the risks surrounding puberty blockers with taking aspirin.
Cannot eliminate the risk of detransitioners. So it becomes a pure exercise of weighing benefits versus risk. And the question of how many minors have to have their bodies irreparably harmed for unproven benefits is one that is best left.
I'm sorry, Counselor. Every medical treatment has a risk, even taking aspirin. There is always going to be a percentage of the population under any medical treatment that's going to suffer a harm. So the question in my mind is not, do policymakers decide whether one person's life is more valuable than the millions of others who get relief from this treatment? The question is, can you stop one sex from the other?
My namesake, Jonathan Turley, professor of law at George Washington University, was frankly aghast at that comparison, as were millions of others on social media. I mean, you heard that with your own ears. You just heard a Supreme Court justice make an analogy comparing the risks of puberty blockers and gender surgeries for minors to the risks of taking aspirin. And as Professor Turley points out, there are numerous studies that detail the radical risks of these treatments that include irreversible changes like double mastectomies and genital surgeries, sterilization, and effects on bone growth. But what's so interesting here is that Turley noted that while the conservative justices acknowledged studies on both sides, right, they took into account both sides, they took into account the evidence presented on both sides, and they looked at it and weighed it and so forth. By contrast, the liberal justices exemplified a complete and total dismissal of any research or evidence that challenged the pro-trans, so-called gender-affirming narrative. Anything that called into question their striking down Tennessee's law banning gender-changing drugs and procedures for minors was dismissed out of hand by these Supreme Court justices. And all you have to do is ask is, where have we seen that before? Where have we seen those who questioned woke orthodoxy, the narrative of the establishment? Where have we seen them vilified and dismissed, often with the most absurd of rationales? I mean, can you say COVID? Right? Do you remember the myriad of scientists who were vilified and deplatformed simply because they questioned the COVID policies advocated by Fauci and the CDC? Just because they questioned them? Just because they cited studies that contradicted them? I mean, you may remember something called the Great Barrington Declaration. It was penned by eminent medical experts from the most prestigious universities in both the United States and the UK. It was published in October 2020, and it argued for a far less extreme, far more scientifically orthodox way of dealing with the virus. And its basic gist was to provide maximum protection for at-risk populations, such as the old or those with pre-existing conditions, all the while at the same time allowing the rest of the population, particularly school-aged children, to live out their lives as normal as possible. Sounds reasonable, doesn't it? Not if you're Anthony Fauci, not if you're the CDC. We now know, based on internal emails that have been made available to the public, that Anthony Fauci, along with Francis Collins, the director of the NIH, actively sought to silence and discredit and shut down the Barrington proposal. These are the guardians of democracy? What happened to a free exchange of ideas and the open, transparent presentation of evidence? Well, I'm glad to say that this evidential double standard, where only one side's evidence is allowed or even considered, while the other side is utterly dismissed, this double standard was explicitly called out by Justice Sam Alito.
A question about the state of medical evidence at the present time. In your petition, you made a sweeping statement, which I will quote. Overwhelming evidence establishes that the appropriate gender-affirming treatment with puberty blockers and hormones directly and substantially improves the physical, psychological well-being of transgender adolescents with gender dysphoria. That was in November 2023. Now, even before then, the Swedish National Board of Health and Welfare wrote the following. They currently assess, quote, that the risks of puberty blockers and gender-affirming treatment are likely to outweigh the expected benefits of these treatments, which is directly contrary to the sweeping statement in your petition. After the filing of your petition, of course, we saw the release of the Cass report in the United Kingdom, which found a complete lack of high-quality evidence showing that the benefits of the treatments in question here outweigh the risks. And so I wonder if you would like to stand by the statement that you made in your petition, or if you think it would now be appropriate to modify that and withdraw the statement that there is overwhelming evidence establishing that these treatments have benefits that greatly outweigh the risks and the dangers.
I, of course, acknowledge, Justice Alito, that there is a lot of debate happening here and abroad about the proper model of delivery of this care and exactly when adolescents should receive it and how to identify the adolescents for whom it would be helpful. But I stand by that there is...
I stand by it. Those are the words not of a lawyer or a logician or of an evidentialist. Those are the words of a fanatic. What that lawyer said, those are the words of an ideological fanatic who twists the evidence to fit their ideological fundamentalism. This is what we see every single morning from the borderline illiterates at The View. I mean, now, perhaps that explains why woke liberals are so irrational as to make this the hill they want to die on. Our good friend Mark Mitchell over at Rasmussen points out that their extensive polling has found that only about 20% of Democrats actually support the surgical transition of minors. You heard that right. 20% of Democrats support that. 20. Their own political party overwhelmingly rejects this. And this, of course, fits with what we talk about, this pattern that we've been seeing and we talk about very often on this channel, how wokeness is dying in real time. It's dying in real time precisely because it's completely politically untenable and unsustainable. Take any woke issue you want out there. I mean, this issue of medically transitioning kids or biological men competing in female sports, transgenders serving in the military. Take any woke issue out there. You poll that issue, and you will find that it actually splits those on the political left right down the middle. 50% will support it. 50% will actually oppose it, right? The Bill Maher's of the world will actually oppose it. Or in this case, with the Rasmussen poll, barely 20% support it. But then go ahead and poll the political right on any one of those woke issues, and you'll find that 100% of them oppose it. So woke issues split the left but unite the right. More people will always be more likely to vote against a woke issue than they will be to vote for it. So what does that mean? Bottom line, it means that wokeness is simply no longer politically viable anymore. I'll say that again because I think that's so imperative for us to understand what's happening in our culture right now. Wokeness is no longer politically sustainable, precisely because of these dynamics, precisely because wokeness splits the left and unites the right. Woke issues are no longer politically viable anymore. So is it any wonder that the LPGA, the Women's Pro Golf Tournament, has just announced as of yesterday that they are officially banning biological males from playing? That was not their policy up to this point. They were totally pro-trans athletes being included in the Women's Pro Golf League over the last few years. But that inclusion is now officially over. Only those designated as females on their birth certificates will be allowed to join the league. And we could go on and on. The International Swimming Organization has just recently banned biological males from competing. And President-elect Donald Trump is now reportedly planning on issuing an executive order on day one of his presidency that would effectively ban transgender individuals from serving in the U.S. military. And it was just announced that the University of Michigan just ended all DEI policies and all their hiring and training practices. Again, this is what's so important to understand. This is not an issue of right or wrong, the prescriptive side of things. This is discriminative. It's not that. It's descriptive. When all is said and done, what is actually happening here, what's so key to understanding, is that wokeness is simply no longer politically or culturally viable anymore. Its biggest proponents on the Supreme Court have been reduced to argumentative absurdities, and its politics are completely splitting apart the only political advocacy that remains for it. It does truly appear as if wokeness has finally reached its end, and I think I speak for all of us when I say it will not, for a moment, be missed.